All right, Keith, we are live. Welcome to the show, man.
What's going on? I'm making sure that my phone is not on for any particular reason,
Mm.
to be, disrespectful with the mic, because I know I hate when that happens when I'm watching a podcast or something.
Well, very grateful for that. I just put I sometimes I forget actually to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'll put my Mac and everything on Do Not Disturb, and I'll have my phone on vibrate, but it'll start vibrating and it'll
Oh,
break my presence. I don't even know if people will hear it, but what it does do is it'll break my presence, which I don't like. So I did just turn that on Do Not Disturb as well. Vibrate's not good enough when I record, but welcome to the show, man. This is we scheduled this a couple months back and ended up being, from a conversation standpoint, um, decent timing because of some of the things we're going to dive into. But before we do that, uh, share a little bit about yourself, man. What?
hey,
Who is Keith?
sure. Thank you for having me on the show, man. I know that we have a lot of mutual friends, and they always speak very highly about your podcast and generally, what you bring to the table. But for me, these are normal conversations that I have with anybody. If you're willing to listen, or you have a question about some controversial topic, I will address it for you. But about me, I'm a pretty basic dude, man. I'm a corporate jerk. I do photography, fitness stuff. But when it comes down to it, like I enjoy my city. I love Orlando. I love people that are around. I get involved in local government. And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make sure I get mine. That's it. Like real simple stuff. I want to make sure I get mine.
Hmm. So something we do have in common. I don't know if you've realized this, but I feel like we both are pretty heavy political meme posters in our Instagram stories. Uh,
Yes.
Yours are of a slightly different viewpoint than mine. Not all, because we talked about that in the pre-show. And we're going to dive into it. I'm more libertarian, where I think you're a little left leaning, but than I am. But that's okay. That's why we're about to dive into some of this stuff. So I'm really excited. So we're recording this. What about a week after the Derek Chauvin verdict? So just in this police brutality topic has been pretty top of mind. I would say it's maybe the most popular topic right now in the media. If not, it's probably. I mean, it's again, whenever people are listening to this, it is a really really popular conversation at this point. So I want to start it off by just, regardless of facts and viewpoints and everything like that, because I know we're going to have some strong opinions there. Just how does it feel to be a black man in America in 2021 with some of the stuff going on?
Man, it's exhausting. It is it is almost a constant fight, not only with people who refuse to see what is obviously in front of them, being unable to empathize with the plight of individuals of color dealing with these constant threats. And, it's tough. And this is a conversation I had with my family at 6 years old. 6 years old, I'm being told that all cops have guns. Anybody with a gun should be respected because they can take your life if you step out of line. Okay, I'm a little kid, like that's a cold reality of the world, but how many 6 year olds in America are being brought up with the idea that, hey man, like if you're a cop or a cop arrests you for whatever reason, be careful because they might have to end your life. That's a pretty extreme reality, but that was the reality that was like, presented to me. And now in 2021, seeing the old guard that came before us, watching us get like, tear gassed and beat for activism and protests and stuff like that because we believe police brutality is reprehensible and it's finally being reported at a level that we can see that it's consistent. It's rough. It almost makes you have to go numb and protect your emotions to make sure that you don't just lash out when the slightest bit of, I guess, overwhelming emotion just penetrates you. So for me, being a black kid in America, yes, is exhausting. While I can see a bit of hope, with these recordings, I feel like when we have somebody who has been recorded doing what was done to George Floyd, and we still don't know whether or not the verdict will be just for what was done, that's wrong, and that's crazy. So yeah, that's just my opinion or how I feel about being black here.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. You touched on the old guard. I'm assuming that was referring to Donald Trump, right?
No, 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 no. When I talk about the old guard, I mean the old guard in regards to the generations of black people that came before me.
Mm.
So when they talk about when they are seeing, like I have some photographs from several protests, and hearing a woman in her 60s out there talk about what she went through when she was a kid, and to see that they're still gassing these babies and still beating these babies, but now it's on camera. Like, it was so disheartening to hear that, because in her eyes, it's not changed, but it's just being televised.
Hmm. Yeah. Would you? And this, what I'm about to ask, is like viewed as controversial, which is unfortunate. So we're gonna talk into some things that may be addressed or may need to be addressed. But would you agree there's, at least as a starting point, because I think you can have two thoughts at once. You can chew gum and walk at the same time. Would you agree there's been massive amounts of improvement over the last few decades in regards to racial relations in the U.S.?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Just for the simple fact that you have, white folks on the front lines of these protests as well. You have individuals who clearly see what is happening or what's been happening and know the history of how we collectively got here. You and I can have this discussion. You're a white guy, I'm a black guy. We can have this discussion, keep our emotions in check, but the reality is that you and I are just trying to understand one another. Whether we go forward with the information we get from each other and try to make the world better, that's a separate conversation. But you've taken the time out of your day to at least understand or try to understand what me, Keith Pottinger, was going through. Meanwhile, I'm trying to understand what you, Jeremy, what you're going through. Because this is how we get better, is through conversation and change behavior. I can sit there and have a bunch of reactions and just spout off a bunch of clickbait articles or, nonsensical tweets that don't give enough statistics. Or I can let you know, like, hey, man, this is why this group of individuals are afraid to go here or do this or say this. If you're willing to understand or at least listen a little bit, you never know how that knowledge could be, essentially power for you in going forward to spread the information to somebody else who could be spouting off ignorance.
Yeah. And I agree with that completely, and thank you again for having this conversation. What has your experience been like personally with police officers? Has it been a mix? Has it been overwhelmingly positive, negative? Like, what has your personal experience been?
Okay. At 15 years old, I was shooting a movie with some friends of mine in my neighborhood. My neighborhood is not the most affluent. It is Riviera Beach / Lake Park, Florida. Okay, but these are the folks I grew up with, and I was going to a school that had a film magnet, so I wanted to shoot a movie. Shooting a movie, and then the cops show up. Actually, a police officer shows up. I'm 15 years old, right? At 15 years old, I'm almost this big. All right? Okay. So I tell my friends, because I'm like, hey, man, this cop is here. Just leave. I live in this apartment, so there shouldn't be a big deal. So I'm trying to de-escalate the situation, and I go to the cop. And the cop says, hey, man, do you know what's going on here? There was a call about some kids who stole some camera equipment, and they're just, like, making a scene. So I said, he's like, making a scene. I thought it was funny because we're shooting a scene.
Yeah, it's a pun.
And I was like, well, I don't think he meant it like that. He was just like, all right, just seeing what's going on. But I let him know, like, hey, man, this is my equipment that I borrowed from school. we're shooting a movie. These are my friends. And the cop was like, listen, I have to handcuff you for my safety because you're bigger than me. In my mind, I didn't think anything was wrong. So I was like, all right, man, I'm physically bigger than this cop as a kid. So I let this dude handcuff me. Okay. As soon as he handcuffs me, the mothers of the neighborhood come out in droves, and they're about to lose it on this cop. And he's trying to explain, like, I had to handcuff the kid because the kid could be a threat to me. I want to make sure that nothing happens to the kid or happens to me. So while I investigate what's going on with this stolen camera equipment that could potentially not be stolen. And he's like, the cop is just trying to explain himself, like, hey, because he asked me, do you have any ID? And I'm like 15 years old. I don't have any ID. I don't have a learner's permit. I have nothing on me.
How old are you now, by the way?
I'm 38.
Okay, so this was in the 90s or
Yes,
early 2000s? I can't do the math in my head. Okay, I'm just trying to get an idea of when it was. Okay, but anyway, sorry to call your age. You look younger than 38, by the way.
Sorry, I appreciate it, man. Black don't crack.
That's true.
So this, in my mind, I was like, I just trusted the cop. I didn't see anything wrong. Whatever. Me being a dumb kid, just like I said, I told you I was brought up like, respect the cops. They got guns. You don't want to die. Okay. But listening to the reactions from the mothers, like, what young man this age has ID on him? Like, why would you do this? You've handcuffed this child. You about to arrest him? And he's trying to explain his piece. And the landlord, she gets her master key for my home and opens the door and pulls out a photograph of my mother. Like, he lives here. Let him go. And then the cop uncuffs me, apologizes, and leaves. So my mother wasn't home because she was at work, but she got home like an hour later, and all the mothers in the neighborhood are waiting. And they explain what happened. And my mother is an absolute lady, okay? Doesn't curse, doesn't do any of those things, always has her emotions in check. Not today. She called that police station and demanded that that officer come to our home and apologize. All right? Well, that officer didn't show up, but they did send another cop. And this cop looked like he should have been a professional wrestler or like the bad guy in any like kung fu flick. He was massive. He made me look like a child. Well, I was a child, but physically he made me look like I was nothing. And this man took the verbal evisceration from my mother, who did not curse, just letting you know that she used every single SAT word that she had ever known at this man to express her displeasure in the traumatic event that her child was subjected to. And the man took it for 10 to 15 minutes, right? He once again apologized and left. It never happened again. And the cops, there was no shade or anything like that. Like, the cops weren't like eyeing our neighborhood or, looking for me to like make an example. That was my first experience with the cops in a way where it could have gone like potentially negatively had I maybe known, or I don't know. I was just, like I said, some dumb kid. But if I was white, would I have been subjected to that? Would they have worried about, what I had said in regards to the camera equipment being mine or barred from the school? I don't know. Does it bother me to this day how it happened? Nah, I got over it. I'm alive to tell the tale and explain how it went down. What I think is fascinating was that the cop left once the picture was presented. He explained himself. No fists or hands were thrown. No guns were drawn. And then that police department actually sent an officer to my home to he knew he was going to take a verbal abuse from my mother. I think he knew that. And he just took it. And I was like, I think back and so I'm like, there were so many ways this could have gone sideways. But it was just a conversation. Emotions were a bit high, obviously, because a child was handcuffed in front of his home. And obviously these mothers and parents have lived through a time where they've seen it go south. So that was like my first instance of kind of some interesting, not necessarily shady, but weird circumstances a child was put under.
By the way, I appreciate that viewpoint, which is like maybe there was something there, maybe it wasn't. And this is one of the things I wanted to ask you is I wish that was the viewpoint. And like, because I feel with a lot of things that go on, that's the only way true progress can really happen is look at the situation and say, maybe there was racism involved. Maybe there wasn't. We don't know. We should investigate, because if we just title everything racism and label it that, like, in many cases, in my opinion, I'm not saying there aren't racist cops. There's racist people in the world. A percentage of them happen to have a badge and work for your local police department. I think it's a lot smaller than it used to be. They still exist. What I think a lot of it is just improper training. Improper training, or just people are assholes. They're going to be an asshole. It's a combination of improper training, assholes, and some racism mixed in there. And so it's like we see something that happens, and it's like. And then this is, I'll say as a white guy, right? And this, I want your opinion on this. I'm very much for solving these issues. But when I see things that it's just like, oh, a cop on a black person automatically labeled as racism, it's like, what? Who are we helping and what are we doing other than just riling people up, labeling everything racism? It's like, hey, a white cop did something to this, non-white, suspect, or this just non-white random person, whatever it is, we're still investigating. Maybe there's some racism, maybe not. But like, what are your thoughts on that? I just don't think it's healthy to just automatically label everything a race issue.
Too many times we'll deal with absolutes. I think the great Jedi Master Yoda once said that only the Sith deal in absolutes. It's much more complex than that. I think that the overarching theme is that the training needs to be better. How do you de-escalate using your words? Or, you're serving the community, right? So why not make sure that what you're putting out there in regards to the community you're serving is you understanding, oh, why did this happen the way it did? And that's the thing, is that everything is so fast nowadays. And the faster you go, the more turbulent things are. So we have a billion ways to break up with people, a billion ways to communicate with people. We can order food and have it here within an instant, essentially. But no one actually sits down to have a conversation to legitimately ask, why are you either committing this or doing this or reacting to this? How can I, as a police officer or whatever, perhaps talk you down from this bridge, or better serve you to make sure that this doesn't happen again? That is what we've lost. We've gone so fast that we've forgotten to slow down. And if I'm looking at body cam footage of a cop showing up to a scene, and within 16 to 18 seconds of him arriving on that scene, he's discharged his sidearm to take out a suspect without actually verifying what's going on. I don't know, there's got to be something in between like that knee-jerk reaction and then sitting down to have a conversation. There's got to be something in the middle of that we can perhaps find to make sure that, all right, let's not take out this person or the civilian. Let's restrain them, or do something else that's not so final as shooting them.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I mean, that seems to be common sense. This is where I'm gonna share some data. And just to be clear, and I think most Americans are for it at this point, just getting rid of a lot of the police immunity that exists. And the good thing is it's bipartisan, regardless of the reasons. I think more libertarian conservatives are I don't want cops having too much power, and then more whatever reason it is, it's just we probably should just not have the protections in place that the police do. And I think most of Americans, from what I understand and what I've seen, are for just BS immunity, where if a cop shoots somebody, they just like have, and that seems to be the case. Like that's what Bill Maher talked about on his show Friday, is like maybe slower progress than a lot of people want, but there is some progress being made in those areas. But there are hundreds of millions of interactions a year between police officers and civilians, and we'll talk about some of them, which I think a big chunk of those is a big waste of funding and everybody's time. But out of hundreds of millions of interactions, there's estimated about 1,000 deaths by police a year in the U.S. A vast majority of those 1,000 are when the suspect is considered armed and dangerous. Very, very small percentage of those 1,000 a year are unarmed. So the data actually does show it's very, very rare that police do use their guns. Maybe not, well, at least, maybe, I don't know the data on like them actually bringing the gun out and pointing. Maybe it's like much, much higher than it should be. I haven't seen anything on that. But just based off of police actually pulling the gun out and killing somebody, out of hundreds of millions of interactions a year, about 1,000 people die annually, roughly, give or take, by the hands of police. Many of those are considered armed and dangerous. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like the data, and I don't, because I've talked with my friend LaShawn on this episode, like it's hard for me, or on this podcast, it's hard for me to say where they're violent, where they're actually bringing their gun out, because my friend LaShawn said they treated them like shit and pulled their gun out, and I'm obviously like that should be addressed too, and I agree that's where training can come in to avoid that. But from like a pure like killing people standpoint, it's very, very, very small percentage out of hundreds of millions of interactions a year.
So you'd be like, when I hear people ask questions like this, or that could cause somebody to fumble, you got to be like, that's a great question, Jeremy.
No,
because they're thinking about that. No.
Yeah.
I'm just messing with you. But in 2014, there was an incident with Mike Brown being shot by a police officer, an unarmed black man, and then that was an extraordinarily tragic incident, and it's kind of led to where we are today. Before that, the police accurately tracking fatal interactions and then volunteering that information to the FBI, that was not as common as it is now. So in 2015, news outlets like the Washington Post decided that they would do their own independent tracking using the police reports, social media, and other avenues to make sure they were collecting data. And you're right about that. From 2015 to 2021, there's been roughly 1,000 fatal interactions with police officers, out in the field. My biggest issue with that is that a criminally amount of those interactions have no body cam footage. In fact, Florida has only, of those fatal interactions that happen in Florida, it's only 7%. Florida's one of like the worst in the nation. And you've got states that, like Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Alaska that have a higher amount of this happening as well. So prior to Mike Brown, we don't have accurate data. And now that we have all these smartphones and all these things, and to help, get the parts of data to be much more accurate about what's going on, the question is, why are so many of these fatal shootings happening without the body cam footage being put on? I think that is the bigger issue. While we can use ruthless calculus to quantify that it's okay, their interactions are fine because only X amount of people are dying, whatever, don't worry about that. It's an inconsequential.
I'm not saying don't worry. I'm just saying the data supports that it's a very, very small issue. Like I view it as not that it shouldn't be addressed. Like we probably, from a policy standpoint, we probably agree on most things on where policy should be updated or changed. But from a pure data standpoint, it does look like a vast, vast majority, 99.999%. I mean, whatever 1,000 is. And I mean, I don't know the data of like which are how many are shot and not killed. I'm sure that's, handful of thousands more. But a vast, vast majority of the cases do not end up violent. So that's only why I bring this up, is like, not that there are things shouldn't be addressed, and not that we should, work together to increase police training and probably give them mental health care and like reduce, some of them work like crazy shifts. I mean, there's a lot of obvious things that seem like it would probably make that position healthier and make people's, put them in a better mood to then better trained and better positioned to treat those situations. But just, I do think the media blows it out of proportion a little bit in that sense. Again, not that we shouldn't address it and not that those lives aren't important. That's not what I'm saying. But if you look at it from a data, like if someone didn't look at the data and they just based their, opinion based off what the, how the media acts and what you see on social media, you would think there's just like people dying in the streets from police daily all over the country. And again, the data, 1,000 deaths a year, give or take, out of 100+ million interactions a year, it just doesn't support that it's as common as what, social media and the media would say. Not that we shouldn't address things, but that's more of why I'm bringing that up.
Well, so in 2020, we lost 988 people to police shootings. In 2021, we've only gone 3 days without a fatal police shooting. However, I think that you touched on something extraordinarily important. Where are you sourcing your information? Because you're right, if you're looking at how the media presents itself, and when I ask my friends who don't live in this country, if I'm gaming with them, like, yeah, what does America look like over there? Like, I know we're a gamer, and they'll tell me, like, honestly, it looks like you guys are, everyone's got guns around the corner, like, the cops are out to get you. And I'm like, okay, where are you getting your media from? It's like, y'all's news, but if I look at other news outlets that are here, it's like, they're like telling me it doesn't seem that bad. So you're right. If anyone dies, if Philando Castile, when that verdict was put out there, and we saw every news outlet just blasting it, just like putting out him being executed by this police officer. Anytime a black man is taken out by the cops, it consumes the news cycle. It's like a modern day adaptation of now lynching. Like, you're going to watch this over and over and over again to demoralize you. When the reality is that what happened last week, well, I guess whenever you air this, but what happened last week with the Derek Chauvin trial, what was essentially just like glossed over was Ghislaine Maxwell saying she was not guilty for the heinous crimes she's accused for. And I'm like, are we divided on human trafficking? Why is this not a bigger deal? I'm not saying that a police officer that executed a man on camera shouldn't be put on trial and, had these verdicts read out to him or whatever because of what he has done clearly on camera. What I'm saying is that why is it immediately the reaction to make it extraordinarily racial, let that consume the news cycle, when we have this terrible human that pleaded not guilty for human and sex trafficking for an extraordinarily long time? Why is that? And that's my issue, is the spin doctors and the manipulation and propaganda from the media wants you and I to always be at war, wants you and I to never see anything eye to eye, because that doesn't fit their narrative. The main idea for news is that if it bleeds, it leads. People got to come home, take a look at the news and realize, well, I know I just worked 60 hours this week, but I'm so glad my life isn't as bad as these folks over here. He's like, man, black folks are getting really uppity and dangerous for some reason. Why are they upset? They live in the greatest, most powerful country in the world. That's, you know what I'm saying? Or like your Fox News would be like, 50% of people killed by cops are white. And I'm like, well, 13% of the folks that are like, black folks make up 13% of the population, but we're killed disproportionate amount. But once again, it's got to be about race. That has to always be the narrative for these ridiculous things when we are not protecting our kids. We are, and I know that's like a different direction than we're talking about in regards to police brutality, but anytime we bring these conversations up about the sex trafficking, the human trafficking or whatever, nobody wants to talk about it because that is a hard conversation, right? But these difficult conversations need to be had. this is a terrible thing that is existing in our backyard. And folks are just like, nah, the media keeps telling us that black folks are being too uppity and they should be appreciative of the fact that they are in this country. I don't know what they're so upset about.
What you're saying right there, where do you get that from? Where do you hear that being the narrative?
You talking about black folks should just like take a seat and not be upset about
Being
the
too uppity,
atrocities.
or because you said that twice. Where are you inferring that that's being said?
So there are, whenever we have these conversations, and every now and then you'll get, if I'm out either doing some protesting or working for some local nonprofit, I seem very approachable. People want to have the conversation. They're like, oh, you seem like a nice, approachable Negro. So let me ask you a moderately controversial question because it looks like you might be okay for me to assuage any guilt I have about my lack of understanding of the plight of the black folks in America. And then they'll be like, but we live in America. This place is free. And I have to explain, like, African American, the default color for America is white. You say American, that's white. But you got African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, like, whatever, Latino American, everyone else is hyphenated. So it's like, we should just be glad that we're not in the National Geographic portrayal of how Africa looks, where everybody's in like, huts and living on the savannah, that we are in a modern society and we have all the amenities like running water and electricity. I know that's an extraordinarily extreme reaction to it, but I've heard it enough times where it's like, is that what you think Africa is like? Do you think it's just like teepees just like grass huts and everybody's got like a giraffe for a pet? I know but these are because I talk with so many people in regards to like race or politics or whatever. And I listen to them speak and I'm like, I don't know how you got here. And I'm fascinated that you did, but it's kind of wild because you could be pushing this information out to other folks and
that's a good thing that they're asking you, at least, right? I mean, that's, having the conversation, even though you may not agree with the viewpoint. That's a good thing that the conversation's starting, because that just both sides just ramming each other's opinions down each other's throat is obviously not going to solve anything. So I think a conversation, if you've just in your life helped, shift even on a small level the mindset of 100 people, I mean, that's how some big progress could get made, right? So I mean, I guess, can your reply be, yes, you're right, I am grateful to be in this country, also there's still a lot of stuff we need to do and improve on? Like, is that a reply you've given? Or like,
be like, yes, I can respect how we have grown as a society and a nation, but I can't turn a blind eye to some of the missteps that are still going on.
We agree with that.
That's it.
Like, I agree completely with that.
Like, yeah. So, but you need to. People who don't see the flaws in things, I really have a problem with. Like you have to, even a diamond isn't perfect. So you have to be able to be like, all right, how can we still make this better? How can we build a platform so that the next generation can elevate themselves off of what we've done for them? That's the goal, right? Right? Like, yeah. I want those to be like, you know what? Hey, they did this for us. Let's make sure we do right for the next folks that come after us. That's it. That's what I want. But,
Why do you think you're so approachable? Why do you think that is? Because I actually agree. I think you're a very approachable, friendly guy, energetically. Why do you think that is?
Because I am who I am. I don't have time to be two people. And I generally want to know how the other side thinks, or even the same side. It's like what Sun Tzu was like, know yourself, know your enemy, you know the outcome of the battle. So regardless of how ridiculous some of these ideas are, I don't even unfollow most people who don't agree with some of my political views, but because I need to understand how they got there. And be like, oh, okay, you're a flat earther because you had an inquisitive mind when you were younger, but you didn't process it the way that was like the majority. So you were shunned and disrespected, but now that your inquisitive mind has fostered, it's kind of leaning in a direction towards a group that at least supports you in a little bit of a way. So, like, because we didn't acknowledge this different viewpoint from someone who had an inquisitive mind, they went to a path of brotherhood or sisterhood or camaraderie, even though their message is misconstrued. There's an old African proverb that states that a child will burn. Sorry. A child meant to feel alone from the village will burn that village down just to feel some warmth. That speaks volumes to me. It's like, oh, well, we left you alone to your own devices, didn't give you the appropriate training to foster your viewpoint of the world, so now you're here. We let you down.
Do you identify as a Democrat?
Yeah. Yes. But like, I feel like if the extreme right, all right, wasn't so silly with their rhetoric sometimes, most times, you would have more black folks that are conservative.
Well, that's actually what I was going to ask you next, actually. It's funny you say that. Like, I mean, roughly 90% of the black community votes Democrat, right?
Yeah, it's about that.
I mean, it's
pretty...
Although Trump did get record black male vote, which is for a Republican candidate, or at least it was like massive improvement over like Mitt Romney, which makes sense. I mean, Romney just seems like a typical white Republican. Like Trump, whether you love him or hate him, like there's something different about him. So I could at least be like, oh, well, he's not what the Republican Party like was 4 years ago even. Well, I mean, I guess he got elected in 2016, but he's not Mitt Romney, he's not McCain, he's not George W. Bush, that's for sure. What do you think it would take for more? It is crazy. So like Democrats got more of the white vote and Republicans got more of the Hispanic and black vote compared to 2016, which is pretty interesting. But what would it take for more of the black community to vote conservative?
Oh, I can't spill those secrets. I mean, but if you go to any black church and actually have a conversation with them, they will volunteer that information easily. I think, from my perspective, Trump came across as just, he's so different. He paints himself as this very successful businessman that's so different from the politicians who are career politicians, who have grown up into this stuff. And, the White House shouldn't be about two families going back and forth. It shouldn't be about the Bushes and the Clintons, like, trying to get up in there over and over again. So here you got Trump coming through, and he says all this clickbait stuff, real simple things that anybody can just latch on to. There's something complex about what he's trying to say. We're going to build a wall. They're going to pay for it. Like, you got to protect our people, get money back in the workers' hands or whatever. He just says all the things you want to hear. But at the end of the day, it's just like, you have to ask, how did these politicians fail the people that they're supposed to be supporting? And I know this is probably going to get me in a lot of trouble. I don't say that's a lot of trouble, but remember when all those emails for Hillary leaked or whatever?
Yeah.
They were all that? I was reading through quite a few of those because I was bored one day. And I was like, man, none of these emails really talk about how we can help folks. How can we help people that are voting for us? It was just, it kind of hurt my heart. And I didn't go through obviously every email, but I was like, I wish I was talking about the folks y'all trying to work with a little better than this, or at all. So,
what would it take for you personally? What would it take for you personally? And by the way, like, if I'm not like a big Trump guy, like I've said that on many, many shows, there are some moderate Democrats I would have considered voting for over Trump. Amy Klobuchar, I thought she was like a nice, strong, moderate Democrat. Even like a lot of people don't agree with me, a lot of my conservative friends, but I didn't hate Mayor Pete either. Something about him. just a typical moderate Democrat. And again, Biden's big issue. The older thing, which he seems to have gotten a little bit better with like his gaffes and like some of the weird stuff that he was doing, but he just seems like really old. But from a policy standpoint, he's not crazy radical. I mean, if you look at the I wish we would just like open the country back up completely and that wasn't such a big debate. So that's one thing I really lean conservative on, and I'm grateful to be in Florida that we've been open. But the infrastructure bill that Biden has been talking about and that'll probably get passed, like Trump was talking about that the last year. Like Trump isn't like Trump is not conservative. Like that's probably my biggest challenge with I have many big challenges with the Republican Party. One is that they bring like social issues into it way more, and that is very unappealing to a lot of moderate voters, especially something like abortion. By the way, the U.S., we have so many issues that are like single issue voters. Like there are conservatives, which is insane to me. Many of them, they will not, if Republican, they could be like pro Second Amendment, low taxes, like everything a Republican stands for. If that person was like even close to pro-choice, they wouldn't vote for him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if the guy was like, hey, I personally wouldn't choose an abortion, but if some mother just was in a really bad situation and if that was even the viewpoint, I feel like they wouldn't vote for him. Like, there's stuff like that that's not appealing about the party, that to me. But unfortunately, we're just and that's part of a two-party system. So.
And that's the thing. It's like you when it comes to abortion, you'll never ban abortions. You're only banning safe abortions. You're just not gonna do that. And like, what's the difference between like, let's say you got somebody going to a fertility clinic and like the egg doesn't take or it's not going the best way. Like that whole process, how is that cool? Like if that doesn't like take correctly, like I don't know.
Well, and
the hypocrisy.
The argument I hear from a lot of conservatives is like, which I guess is somewhat of an evolved viewpoint, but still, it's just like, well, okay, but I've heard a viewpoint being, even though I don't agree with it, I'm okay with it as long as the government doesn't pay for it. It's like, okay, that's a little bit of progress, but it's like, if the government doesn't pay for it and it doesn't get done, 18 years of government assistance is a lot more than that abortion would have cost. You know what I mean? Like, that is right. A lot more expensive than the abortion. So there's things like that the Conservative Party are like really, really passionate about, the pro-life stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know why. There's so much hypocrisy on both sides of politics, like my head's spinning right now, but like that's a big one. It's like I'm a big I talk about him a lot because he calls himself a Democrat. I'd say he's more libertarian, but Bill Maher, and he said one time like Republicans care about the baby until it's born, you know?
Right.
And I don't, again, not from like moderates, but extreme. Like unfortunately, I do think there's some accuracy to that, which again, I'm pretty like, you know, as I'm for government spending at some level, but I lean on the side of lower taxes across the board and stuff like that. But like, that is the case. Like, we care so much about these lives, but then once that baby's born, it's like, you know, for less assistance for the moms that need it, or for like there's a lot of weird shit. Anyway, not to go on too big of a rabbit hole there, but when some people view me as this like hardcore conservative at times, and it's just like, there's a lot of things I don't agree with from like the Republican Party as a whole. I will say I don't even think what the Republican Party stands for truly represents so many of the guys that are just like me, that are just like, hey, a lot of this stuff is crazy, but I work really hard on my businesses and I'd like to pay a little bit less taxes. You know, like, right. There's so many of those Republicans that I feel like if the Democrats would actually pick those people, like, they would just be winning these elections in a landslide. I don't know if that's possible. There's like a few things. It's like if the Republicans like were for legalizing marijuana, I feel like they would win in a landslide. Like, there's like a couple things, but anyway, now I'm on a rant. What are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, the hypocrisy is very clear. But the thing is that what you presented is not even uncommon. That is always talked about and discussed. And it's kind of like, well, if you want to get these voters, what do? Well, okay, then let's dial back some of the things that we know there's going to get some flack for. The pro-choice thing, like, all right, we can really work on that, make that a bit more presentable, because the 18-year cost of having a child going through the system, and like how they may not necessarily contribute to society once they're 18. Every child coming through, or every child that could potentially that is unplanned, isn't going to grow up to be a Tim Tebow. All right, like don't let that fool you.
So what you're talking about, the 18-year cost, plus a lot of times in these broken households where the kid is not like wanted, ideally, they're much more likely to commit crimes. I mean, they could be a lifetime of government expenses with being in and out of prison and stuff like that. I mean, it is a very it's a very short-term vision for what could be 80 years of government expenses for that child.
And that seems so simple. Like, okay, you make abortions feel safe. Mistakes were made. Let's educate these kids from like a young age, like about like how the body works and what they should be protecting, because abstinence obviously doesn't work. Let's ask Sarah Palin about that. So educate these children so they understand how these things actually work, so they can be careful, give access to prophylactics and contraceptives, and here we go. Now we've got kids who are educated, and hopefully they'll be able to do what's right and not have to worry about like some back alley, backdoor abortion, or having the kid putting themselves in danger and then potentially being out on the streets, because you're now just perpetuating this cycle of abuse in government funds, since you've now brought a child into the world that may not feel loved, may not be supported, and might not contribute to society. And that's going to cost us in the long run.
And even if you don't give a shit about that kid, it costs you more, the taxpayer, more money.
I think if you just explain the money, like this is what it costs in the long run. So 80 years, one time, a one-time payment, or an 80-year subscription.
That's a good way to put it. Hopefully it probably won't be anytime soon. Maybe it could be, actually, because there are some younger Republicans that are more pro-choice. So it could be in the next couple dozen years. Maybe by the time our age, people are in their 50s and they're like really heavily involved in politics. But like, are you familiar with who Tomi Lahren is?
White Candace Owens?
So that's a good comparison, actually. I never heard that before. But Tommy got kicked off the Blaze because she was pro-choice. They canceled her show because the Blaze. And so I talked about it with Sophia on that episode, the one you said you listened to about.
Listen to until about the first half hour, then I checked out her social media, and I was like, "Dang, this woman is putting in that work." Like for 19 years old,
no, it's
I was
wild.
not this ambitious.
No, I don't know.
But when she hit you with like that question, I was like, "Oh," she's like, "That's a good question," and I was Jeremy, and I was like, "Oh, this is a lawyer's daughter." Like this is a lawyer's daughter.
Yeah, she did that multiple times. She reassured the question before. But yeah, like Tomi Lahren is, obviously a very, very like outspoken conservative, but she's very, very pro-choice. She's more in that libertarian where it's just like, why do you care about what I'm doing in my house, pretty much? Like, why do you? And that's what's weird about, like, I have to imagine, like, if we could go back to 1776 when the Declaration of Independence was being signed, and this will be a nice segue into what I want to talk to you about too. The founding fathers who fled England, they're like, fuck taxes, fuck the king, we want to worship whatever god. If you would have told them this plant that grows from the ground is illegal, they came over here on the ships, you can have this whole free country, you can drink this liquid that's really dangerous, if you drink too much of it. But this plant in the ground, you can still go to prison for that. Like, that to me, like, so I want to, and I have some stats. I brought up prisonpolicy.org, and this isn't a conspiracy per se, but I do think there's something here. We talk about like police brutality, and again, we agree that some action should be taken, but my viewpoint on it is it's blown out of proportion a little bit, because I think the elephant in the room is the war on drugs, and I think both parties are incentivized by payments from the prison systems and stuff like that to not address this issue, although some progress is being made, but still on a federal level and still in many states it's crazy. But I brought up stats from 2020, and state prisons there's 145,000 people, and local jails 120,000, and another 50,000 or so in like federal prisons and jails. I mean, multiple hundreds of thousands of people just last year were in these prisons for drug charges. I would imagine they're disproportionately minority, because wealthy white people get over the counter and prescription stuff. But like, isn't that like the hundreds of thousands of people that are in prisons? Don't you think that's a bigger threat to low income and minority communities than the police? And there would also be less interaction too. If this was decriminalized, there'd be less interaction between police, so some of those interactions would go down too. But what are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, if you make it so that these drug charges, because right now we have just folks going away for marijuana charges back in the 90s, while I'm watching these cannabis buildings pop up, and folks are making money hand over fist for this stuff. It's hurtful, because right now, when these folks come out of prison for a crime that disproportionately had them in there for a long time, how do you think they're going to feel? They're not rehabbed in a way. That crime is not as heinous as some sort of murder or sexual assault or violent crime or whatever it may be. And now folks are making hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of dollars on like a marijuana. I think we've done them we've put so much harm, that we need to look back and be like, how did we get here? Once again, it's because we've allowed the police, with qualified immunity and quite a few other things, to just get stop and frisk in New York, and you're essentially just you're a solution looking for a problem in so many of these cases, that if we did get rid of some of these like ridiculous drug charges, or at least like decriminalize them in a way that's not going to make the person be ripped from their entire livelihood and home for all these years, and when they come back out, they're like they've been put through a meat grinder and don't even resemble the form they used to be. How does that benefit our society in the long term? We're not even like appropriately rehabbing those who have these drug addictions. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not like we got their best interests at heart. We're just profiting off of them, and just the prison system is just new slavery.
I think that, and again, I don't even know how this, like, I look at, sometimes I think like this is just a distraction off the elephant in the room, which I think this has to happen in the next 10 years, hopefully, that at least marijuana and like mushrooms or something, because they literally just grow from the ground. Marijuana, right, seems like there are hundreds of thousands of people that are taken out of society, government spending, because the cops have to arrest them, they have to go through the court system, they have to be held in a prison, massive government spending. Then they're taken out of society, so they're no longer tax-paying citizens, so you're not collecting tax revenue. You're taking most likely a father out of their home, which is going to make that household lower income household, make the family, like the kids, like a lot of bad things happen when your household's lower income. So that just seems like the obvious one. Like, so many families would be positively impacted, less government spending, more tax revenue, because there'd be more working people, more people to contribute to society, more fathers in the homes, hundreds of thousands of people. And I agree. I mean, people that child molesters and murderers and people with, in some cases, marijuana possession are sharing a prison together. Like that to me,
Right.
that is some crazy shit that I do not like. That seems like the elephant in the room. Like that seems, and again, you decriminalize this stuff, less police interaction too. You know, why? And I will say, I've heard Biden say it a couple times, so maybe he's making some progress. And Trump actually did get many people out of prison for small drug charges. I don't know, they were advertising that a little bit more publicly near the election, but he actually did do that. But what's holding us back from just federally decriminalizing marijuana and like getting over this? Like, I think this is, like, you look at, like, we look back like a few hundred years ago, like slavery, like what the fuck were we thinking? Like a couple hundred years from now, we're gonna look back and be like, we put people, like, ruin people's lives for smoking a plant that was growing out of the ground. Like that actually now has a lot of like health benefits. Like what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? Like what? Why is this even, like, why are there still hundreds of thousands of people in prison and jail for drug charges?
Yeah, in a couple of hundred years, like, when they look back at the plastic age of mankind, aka what we're living in now, they'd be like, they criminalized plants that grew from the ground and took the livelihoods away from hundreds of thousands of people for this. The incentive is money and control. That's it. Like, it's not like you're stopping drugs at like the highest level. You go to some of these, like, I talk to people who went to Ivy League schools, and it's like, yeah, I'm partying with, potentially future lawmakers and watching them do hardcore drugs. No penalties for them. You know what I'm saying? But we need to keep these prisons full. You're making money off these prisons. They're making license plates. You got that free labor in there.
Both.
You're taking advantage of them. Like, you've got them you've got lifelong prisoners in some of like the Capitol buildings in like Georgia or Louisiana, and you got them dressed up, not in prison clothes. You got them dressed up in like top hats and tails. They look like butlers to be shown off. In reality is that these are prison workers. These are trustees or whatever that, like, well, this is what you're going to be doing. Because, you're not hard enough to be in general population, but you're not going to fight back at the fact that, you're essentially just this new slavery. So it's just another form of power and control. And you've presented a lot of great points. Decriminalizing this, putting folks back in society so that a household is complete. You've got both parents, or whatever. You've got both parents there, like, making money, providing for the children, and building that platform we talked about earlier for them, so they can benefit those that come after them. But this, like, is hurtful. Is so demoralizing, because you're sharing a jail cell with some ridiculous killer, and all you did was like have a minimal amount of marijuana on you.
And to top it off, there's drug companies profiting billions legally that sell stuff a lot more harmful to your body than most of these drugs people in prison for.
I mean, the opioid crisis, man. Come on, dog.
The opioid. Yeah.
That devastating. That's still. There was a shooting from an NFL player, a former NFL player from like a month ago. He killed his former doctor because he was no longer able to prescribe him the medication that he thinks he needed. So he took out that doctor and the family because it was like, I can't give this to you anymore, and he lashed out and killed himself. I'm like, what? Is marijuana doing that? Is marijuana like taking out whole families?
The crazy thing about, and it's with abortion, it's with sex work laws, it's with drug laws. When you create laws, obviously, on these things, because people love sex, they love drugs, and because they love sex so much, sometimes they get pregnant, right? laws obviously aren't the solution. We can, like, I think the biggest issue around decriminalizing stuff, from what I understand, because I talk about these things a lot, is when you decriminalize it, you're implying that you're like cheerleading for it. And it's like, you can do two things at one time. You can decriminalize drugs, but also take a fraction of that and invest that into treatment centers, and it would still save the government money. You know what I mean? Instead of, like, there's so many like obvious things, and it's like, even I have family members that are just like so anti-marijuana, and I'm just like, whether you're for it or against it, it doesn't matter. Just like, who cares what people are doing in the comfort of their own home on a Friday night with their friends, or watching a movie and eating, ordering a bunch of Uber Eats stoned, and like, you can hate it and never do it your life, but like that's like a big challenge I'm surprised we still have with this country. It's like, who cares what God people are worshiping? Who cares what, like, who anybody like has sex with, which I feel like we're pretty much past, which is good. But like, who cares what people are smoking? Like, invest in treatment, invest in education, and it would be a fraction of just throwing these people in prison, you know?
But you've presented so many logical points that require at least a bit of education. It's a little bit of education to understand. These aren't like, high level, like rocket science type things. Like, this is the money. This is how much it's going to cost if we do it this way. This is how much it'll cost if we do it this way. That makes sense in regards to like saving money to benefit the community, so that we can get these bridges to not be falling down and all this stuff. Like, we can if you invest in the community so that these individuals actually want to live there, you'd be surprised about how much the people will make sure they're taking care of their own. But when we got, when we're going overseas and fighting these wars, and I'm looking at some of this footage from an area that's way over there across the Atlantic that looks bombed out and depleted, and I'm like, I used to live in a neighborhood that looked like this. Like, I grew up here. Like, what? There's just there's just no palm trees. So, like, you're talking about everything that you said. It comes down like, we could be saving money. We didn't criminalize this. We put the minority of those who have extreme addictions to it. Let's reinvest in them so that they can come out of this and be better and understand that, like, I mean, if you've dealt with anybody who has any type of like drug addiction, then they've been sober for a long time, and you talk to them, they'll say things like, look, man, it is a struggle because I wake up addicted every day and I have to fight that. Now imagine that person knowing that we as a society, hey, we understand that this can happen. I may not have experienced it exactly the way you're experiencing it, but we got you. And if like you stumble along the way, we will help support you so you can get back on your feet. How much better would they be about that?
There is that. So what you're talking is like the shame associated because of it's illegal. People may not admit it, but yeah, I agree. Treat these people like patients and humans, not criminals. But yeah, I mean, it's
think about how we live now, man. So people wake up every day just to be offended, not understanding like why this is happening the way it is. Nobody wants to know the history of how we got here, because the only superpower human beings have is our extraordinary ability to forget. That's the only thing that we really have going for us. We can just forget about our past atrocities and just move on while still doing it again. And the biggest issue now is that, 20, 30 years ago, I, as a kid, got to be dumb by myself because I was in a complete lack of information. Like, I had to go to the library or hope that whatever adult is around me teaching me is educated enough to tell me what's going on, or I'm, like I said, I'm doing my own proactive research. But now we are flooded with information because of the speed of the internet. Unfortunately, the water is poison. It's absolutely poison, and if you don't pick a side, you're my enemy. That's a stupid thing you just said, Jeremy. I don't know. These women shouldn't be just killing these babies. And I'm like, well, you have all these kids that are up for adoption that are in foster care. What are you doing for them?
Yeah. No, I agree. By the way, you said more black folks would be conservative if that extreme right. That's kind of how I feel about the extreme left. Like, if more extreme left wasn't all about, like, just constant, like, pronouns and political correctness and privilege, every type of privilege, just like extreme cancel, like, I think more moderates would lean left. But I think that extreme right, and I've even posted something about this, that extreme right and this extreme left is almost the same person.
Because you can't change their minds for anything.
For nothing.
Like, you can't present anything that's remotely counter to what they've fixed themselves on, because that is how they validate their existence. Not from new information, just from being as loud or obnoxious or as simple as possible. So black and white, when most of the world is gray.
Biden said, I believe he just said he was going to get troops out of Afghanistan by 9/11. Do you believe that's going to finally happen? Do you think we're going to leave Afghanistan?
Are we still making money over there?
I mean, I don't know exactly how it works on a foreign level, but I there has to be some interest that we're not completely privy to. I mean, it's wild that it's been near 20 years we've been in Afghanistan now.
Almost 20 years. Wow. That's sad. That's almost an entire generation. Wow. That's depressing.
So I go back and forth, and I think most of the country does, by the way. I think if you would have asked, on September 12th, a moderate Democrat, like, hey, do you think we should bolster up the military and make sure another 9/11 doesn't happen again? Like, even moderate Democrats be like, yeah, I think we need to, like, America needs to stand up for themselves. I think most of the country at that point was pretty pro-military involvement. I think, so I do change my stance here and there on, like, should we be, like, heavily involved? Should we be, like, more, like, just reactive? And I don't know the exact answer on that, but massive amount of spending, man. Like, there's a lot of spending. And even Biden's new budget, which Democrats run on, like, not spending as much on the military. Like, Biden's new budget proposed an actual military spending increase over Trump, like, which is crazy. Like, there's just a lot of military spending. I remember you talk about building bridges. I just have something funny. Have you ever listened to Howard Stern?
Yes.
So I used to be a big Howard Stern listener, and this was well before Trump was president. This was when he was actually, I would say, pretty beloved by, like, from, like, a pop culture standpoint. Trump was always entertaining, and I think most people just thought at the very least he was entertaining. And he was on Howard Stern one morning, and he was saying that, like, how JFK is like a giant dump, which it is. Have you flown into JFK?
Yes.
It's a giant dump.
Right.
MCO is actually really nice here in Orlando, but JFK is a dump. And he was saying how he flew into, like, Dubai, and he flew in from JFK, and he was meeting somebody there for business or whatever, and he's like, wow, this is, like, the nicest airport I've ever seen. And the guy that, like, greeted him laughed and said, no, this is just our temporary airport. And he, like, pointed down the road, and there was just, like, this huge airport being built. And he's like, the temporary airport. Like, that's definitely something, like, when I see how much we're spending on military, which I'm for a strong military. And I don't know if you know this about me. Like, I'm involved in some, patriotic e-commerce brands, and I'm very, very patriotic, and I'm so grateful to be in this country. I'm so grateful for the First Amendment and be able to talk about stuff. Like, I am a big fan of the United States, and I'm so grateful for our people before us that sacrificed their lives and a lot of stuff for us to be able to have where we are. But with that being said, I think I can be a patriot and not agree on policy issues. And I infrastructure definitely makes sense, right? And I although I'm not a big fan of tax increases, investing in country infrastructure, I think most people can agree is probably a good idea. What are your thoughts? You touched on that a little bit, but do you have any
Yeah,
feelings on that?
build the community up. You make these individuals, you make these citizens proud to be there, and they're going to maintain. They're going to help keep it afloat. Being a patriot doesn't mean you're blindly obedient. Those who love the country the most should be the most critical to make sure the country is at a certain standard of upkeep. We shouldn't have these schools, buildings, bridges just falling apart, our roads that are trash or anything like that. Like, and that is my issue, is that it doesn't feel like a community to a lot of people. So why do they have any value in anything? Why should they care? Why do they care about, either a crime committed or anything like that? Because obviously the government is not caring at the level as to, maintain these areas. I don't know. Being a proud patriot is fine. I think you should love the area that you're in, but the people that are running the area should also make it a wonderful place to be for those that are, they're supporting. I don't know. I could go off on where I grew up and why the community, like the people in that community, always had my back. They had the kids' backs. All the neighbors had their back. But I know that if it was built up, it would have been that much better.
Yeah. It obviously, government spending is extremely complex too, on like what's a federal jurisdiction and local, and some communities are really nice. Like we just talked about MCO. Of course MCO is nice because Florida, that's where we get all our tax revenue from. We don't have a state income tax. We need to welcome people with a brand new shiny airport when they come in here, because that's where our state makes all their money, is off resort fees and tourism taxation and stuff like that. But all right, so switch of topics, because I had one thing I wanted to make sure we got to.
Okay.
How do you think, like, I remember during the campaign, like, Trump has been called a racist for basically since he started running, right?
Right.
But then I see stuff like Biden, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, and then there's some other comments he made. Like, do you think like the president has that big of an impact in 2021 on racial division in the country? Like, do you think they have hardly any impact, the president? Like, do you think anything Biden could possibly do would make that big of a difference?
I mean, I think the president has definitely a major impact, especially when they're using social media to get their message across. The president needs to be very careful about the things that they put out there, because just like somebody misinterpreting the lyrics of a song to like make it seem like, oh, this one is just for me, or this song has told me that I should go out there and commit some atrocity or whatever, you putting the wrong message out there can further divide us, because you are not, I guess what's the best way to say it? If you're not putting the right message out there to make sure that your citizens fully understand what you're trying to convey, you run the risk of dividing us that much more, which will create more problems. And we've seen what can happen with somebody just spouting off nonsense on Twitter that has a pretty high level of power. Like, me not knowing what Trump is thinking right now is great. That is a wonderful thing for me. But everyone just gravitates towards social media, and him putting out there, I guess Trump putting out there, like about the vaccine and like denying all these things in regards to COVID, or using racial, calling it the Kung flu. And now we've got this like higher brand. We've got a ridiculous amount of hate crimes towards the Asian community because of all this, because for some reason it is believed that our Asian Americans contributed to the lockdown in some way. So of course the president can divide us with his improper rhetoric, making it seem like he's racist, making it seem like his comment is racist to bring out those who want to put blame on everybody else but themselves.
So I actually agree with you that I think a lot of what Trump would say would add divisiveness, I guess. So completely agree there. Is there anything Biden can do right now? Maybe the answer is just not tweet, which he doesn't, because I don't, know if he even uses social media. But
he uses Facebook and Instagram quite a bit, but it's more about like it's PR stuff,
what
which is fine.
Well, no. Do you think he's
Fine.
personally posting more of what I was saying? Like Trump obviously is personally writing these tweets. I don't know what Biden is personally doing. That's more not that he doesn't, his account doesn't post, but does Biden personally do it? Who knows?
There's a team. There's a team to make it sound like him
What
in regards to
what could
what
Biden do right now, if anything, to help ease tensions? Because
I
that's where
think
more
he's
of
not.
what?
No, I think getting 200 million people vaccinated in 92 days, great, phenomenal. I think not having knee-jerk reactions to things that could potentially hurt his ego, great, also great. Like not tweeting about falling down the stairs 3 times or whatever, also great. I don't need to know everything he's thinking. You're a civil servant, right? You have you lead the executive branch, you do your thing, but you keep me apprised of like some things I may not be aware of because I've got my own issues I'm dealing with in my everyday life. But I don't think that social media for the president should be a gateway to every single thought that enters his mind. It's a distraction. I think it's overuse of that tool, and I love social media, but like any tool, in the wrong hands, it's dangerous, right? It's always just a tool. It's just a tool to communicate and see what's going on the other side of the world or whatever it may be. Put some information out there very quickly, in 280 characters or Instagram story or whatever. It's just another form to bridge the gap that are borders or communication or whatever. But when someone hurts your feelings, someone really hurts your feelings, as the president, and you're putting it out there at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, bro, you're supposed to have thicker skin than that.
So by the way, I think the tweeting habits are one of the main things on why Trump didn't get reelected. I think if probably that first debate and then just social media in general, I think really hurt him. But more of just, I guess, like, I'm not going to disagree with you that certain habits on social media were extremely poor decision making, but I guess like what can be done to help. So I'm not denying that divisiveness can be further pushed with social, but is there anything the president can do to bring people together? And I am curious. So yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on that. Then I have a question about vaccination.
What the president can do is, like I said, I like what Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris has been doing. They're keeping us updated on social media as to what maybe policy changes are doing. They're reacting to important current events like the Derek Chauvin trial, things like that. They're making it aware that they're paying attention to what goes on outside of Washington D.C. And what they can continue to do is further adapt their style to the language of their constituents. It doesn't need to be overused. Just try to find that right balance. And they need to also remember that the internet is forever. It's forever. So well thought out posts that can truly benefit those that they're serving, I think is fine. But it doesn't need to be overused. Just keep on kind of doing what you're doing right now and then evolve it to speak in the language, attitude, or behavior of your, I guess of your political ideals.
Yeah. Kamala, by the way, put lots of people in prison for drug charges in California.
Oof.
Which was kind of wiped under the rug. Democratic Party did a good job of that, and Trump probably didn't do a good enough job of bringing that to light, but she was ruthless from everything I understand. Really cared about protecting her record. Vaccination. So this is, I think vaccination's a great thing. So I want to start off by saying that. One of the arguments I hear about COVID is I don't know the long-term effects. I mean, I feel like that was like a talking point for like the last year. I don't know the long-term effects of COVID, so I don't want to get it. Okay, well, you're like 20-something years old. You basically are going to have little or no symptoms. Maybe there's a small chance you get flu-like symptoms, but most people younger, like, nope, still, don't want to get it. I don't know the long-term effects. Had that conversation many, many times. I'm of the boat, like, hey, like, I don't know when my time is. If a virus is going to take me out, it's going to take me out. But I'm just going to focus on vitamins and eating, decent food and stuff like that. But anyway, now vaccine that has been in production less than a year, we gladly take, and are in some states being almost forced to take the vaccine. But there hasn't been a ton of clinical trials on it. We don't know the long-term effects of that. It was really, really rushed. I mean, and from a virus that really, like, it wasn't even close to the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu killed estimated 3% of the population, including young, healthy people. We're a fraction of 1%. So is it like, why is it even like anybody questioning the vaccine is like anti-vax, like crazy person? But it's like, we don't, like, a large group of society doesn't want COVID because of uncertainty of the long-term effects, but we just like gladly inject ourselves with this like new type of vaccine that we also don't know the long-term effects of. Like, that to me is scary. And this is again where my libertarian viewpoint comes. Do whatever you want with your body. Put drugs like in your body. If you want the vaccine, get it. If you don't want it, don't get it. Like, why is this vaccine thing? Why is that even not the solution? If you want it, get it. If you don't. Like, why isn't that the solution for this? Why are people getting almost forced to get it in certain places, which international travel may require that to be done, like going to Europe and stuff. So it's not technically forced, but it's very difficult to live outside of your bubble if you don't get it, right? But why isn't just like, if you want it, get it, if you don't? Like, why is that a controversial standpoint, like, on that issue?
I think it depends on the group that you're talking to it about. So what is brought up in the Black community is like the Tuskegee experiments. Also, there's forced sterilizations and things like that. And there's just the uncertainty that you've never had the best interests of minorities or people of color in regards to these types of medicines. I mean, you have Native Americans that were given blankets with smallpox to take them out. So there's just been a long history of being unable to trust the systems in play that are administering these medications. In regards to like the vaccine, COVID scared the world in a way that I don't think anybody was really, I guess, prepared for from like a ground level, from like a street level. That wasn't a concern of mine. Do my everyday business, I wasn't dealing with that. But when you have these lab platforms where you're just spouting off, if you're saying those things like you're using your ruthless calculus to diminish the lives that have been lost, you don't understand the research that normally goes into vaccines. So this one coming out very fast seems unusual, but so much money was poured into it that it revolutionized the way we went about going forward and making vaccines from now on. So everything was just so different from what our generation had been used to. And then with the rise of the anti-vaxxer and then realizing that their whole dynamic was wrong because it was uneducated individuals just spouting what they felt was right, now we've got this division. So when it comes to the vaccine, while I do think it should probably be your choice if you want to take it or not, I also think that there needs to be consistency in how the information is being put out by those that are in power. If Trump had come out for the vaccine or for letting us know like, hey, we should be careful about this. If he had put the information out there on Twitter that he was given a month before these lockdowns and stuff like that, then we'd have been like, okay, this seems kind of serious. The president has tweeted out there, he's letting us know that this is uncertain, a little bit uncertain about what could be happening in regards to like us in the long run, but we should work right now on prevention. And that wasn't happening. It was just, what was being put out there was just racist kind of nonsense. And then he got COVID. He got it. And then we saw him having difficulties breathing. And then even when he left the office, when his term was done, he was out. He didn't even put out there that he had actually gotten the vaccine. That was released after that. Like he didn't say it. I mean, yeah, he was banned from social media and stuff like that, so he couldn't say it anywhere else. But the fact that we weren't made aware that the president was given the vaccine, that's huge. You already knew about how these anti-vaxxers are going out there. So every single thing that you've done up until this point about not, putting away anybody's fears is why we're having this conversation. You got flip-flopping ideals, you've got everybody coming out and just giving their opinion about how they think a vaccine should be created. Why was it so fast? Blah, 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 blah. And the reality is that there's far more depth into what was going on because we were still trying to understand how it was even created, like what led to this. So had the information been consistent in regards to keeping the population informed about, hey, moving forward, we're going to be doing this. We don't want y'all to be outside. We're going to give y'all like a monthly stipend to make sure that y'all limit y'all's outside exposure so that we can get a handle on this, then yes. But it wasn't like that. The inconsistencies are why we have this problem now.
So from an inconsistency of information standpoint, I don't disagree with that. From a we could have contained this, an argument that I am really tired of hearing, really the reason so many people died in the US is because we have a lot of unhealthy people.
That is very important.
We didn't contain it, really. I don't know of any developed country that contained it, at least a peer nation, I would say, without extreme matters. If you look at Western Europe, I mean, it was pretty similar from a per population basis. Obviously South America got crushed. Australia, extreme lockdown. So I don't think anybody, even Democrats, were for some of those measures. So I don't think that's realistic in this. But if we're a healthier country, I don't even know if it's considered a pandemic. You know what I mean? I think it was all the data's been coming out 80% of the deaths from COVID were people that are overweight or obese.
And being overweight is a pre-existing condition. Your body is already working that much harder to support itself. So that's the conversation we should have been having, is how can we get folks healthier, get them moving? But you
get sunlight, take vitamins. That's where I've just lost a lot of trust in a Fauci. Is again, two conversations at once. Hey, if it's an older person, let's be careful. Let's put measures in place to protect the vulnerable. But let's also, hey, you never know who's going to be around you. Start, getting sunlight where you can. Start taking vitamins. Start doing push-ups in your house. Start, avoid this food group if you can. There's that conversation wasn't had, and I don't know if it's just because of the political correctness of where we're at in this country in 2021, where it's everything's considered fat shaming if you talk about obesity, but that would have saved a lot of lives, I think.
So I have a great advantage in the fact that half of my family, they're already vaccinated, but most of them are doctors and nurses, and they were keeping us updated, stuff that wasn't on the news. So I would tell my friends, hey, this is what's going on, man. If you do get this, you need to stay active. You need to be moving. You don't want that to just build up in your lungs or whatever, because you're not doing anything. So you need to still remain active. But wear face coverings, but make sure your diet is healthy. Make sure you're doing what you can to sustain your body in a healthy way, mitigate stress, like whatever you've got to do.
Get
Because if you
sleep.
just sit there, yeah, it was crazy. And I'm like, oh, this is just basic activity you're telling me to do. So, and that went out to the entire family. My family took it seriously because we have a lot of elders. And like, while it sucked, one of my elders, she was celebrating her 90th birthday. So we showed up like on lawns. Sorry about that. We showed up on lawns, or on her lawn, with like signs like saying happy birthday, while she came to the front door. And while it was beautiful, because we were showing that respect and making sure that she is safe, it sucked. It sucked to have to do that. But we as humans have to adapt and evolve so that we can maintain our ability to still be on this planet, right? So that was our adapting to societal changes. We as a society said that, okay, let's do this lockdown for a little bit. So we figured things out. This is new. As a society, we should be like, okay, let's see what's up. The government should have been like, all right, here are some things you may want to work on. Stay active. Let's work on your health. And we're going to give you a bit of money to make sure that, you don't have to worry about this, since not knowing when your next paycheck is going to be arriving is going to contribute to your stress. That's where it sucked. Like, that's where it was truly unfortunate, because the misinformation out there was over the top. And from what my family told me was just basic stuff like, please stay active, drink water, get vitamins. If you have to go to a park, go to a park because you want to be outside. That's it. Like, but it was real simple stuff that I really didn't see anywhere else. And I had several friends who got COVID and they had difficulty breathing. They couldn't taste anything. And I was telling them, like, I appreciate what you told me, because even when I was trying to research it, I wasn't seeing I should stay as active as I did. And just making sure that I walk my dog every day helped me at least, like, feel better. Like I was walking my dog more. I was doing a bit more. And it sucked for those 2 to 3 weeks. One person said he had it for like, I think he almost had a month. He didn't get his taste back for almost a month. That's wild.
I lost my taste for months, plural. I'm like just getting it back fully.
Ooh, dang.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 months. I maybe I think I've had my taste back fully. I'm just started realizing I have my smell back fully. Smell is what was the one that took many months for me to come back. Like, nothing smelled as full, and like maybe it was 60% smell. There was no smell, then like 30%, then like 60%. I start smelling stuff that I haven't smelled in a long time, like body odor and stuff. Like little like hints of things that maybe are a little more discreet. But yeah, I lost it for a long time. My sister did too. Like, she's just getting it back. So, yeah, man. I mean, the panic porn, the news, all adding to stress. All stress makes you unhealthy from any virus, anything. Stress is bad. All right. Last question I have for you. What are some who are some conservatives that you like? Like, who are some conservatives where they're like, okay, I kind of agree with them on some things, but they're not such, I don't disagree with them on policy or think they're completely crazy. Who are some conservatives that you don't completely hate or disagree with?
I mean, I would say the majority of them I don't hate, but it's just I'm trying to think like who really. Okay, I know it's gonna sound silly. Mitt Romney does the least, the absolute least. Now I know he had his failed $1 billion job interview with Barack Obama, so he's been out. But like, he just shows up wearing his mask at like a protest or whatever, like just showing that, hey, I care. Like, I care a little bit. Like, he does the least at like as like a top tier conservative, individual. But when it comes down to it, I feel, as a conservative that I respect, it would be folks that I've had discussions with, like with you. Like, I respect. I know you're not conservative. You're leaning more towards, you're libertarian, but you're a little more conservative. But it would honestly be just like your fellow man and woman who actually understands what it's like to be on both sides of things and can find that, we agree on the majority of things, but how I feel about guns and taxes may different from you. So at the end of the day, most of these politicians I don't care for.
What
I think
about
it's all
a
power.
non-politician, like somebody like a social media influencer? And by the way, sorry, I didn't even thank you for that. For the nice words you said about me. So, what about somebody like a radio host or TV personality or social? Any of the conservatives that you think they're just like, okay, I get their vibe.
So it would be Bill Maher. I know he's not a conservative. He just says, what is he? He
So
said he was.
he he identifies as Democrat. He's not a true Democrat. He is
Right.
very critical of California, like on every one of his shows. Like Bill Maher is not like a true Democrat.
Yes.
He's like where I'm maybe a right leaning libertarian. He's a left leaning libertarian.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like people who utilize social media, that it would probably be Bill Maher would be the closest that I could really get down. But in my opinion, once you get to a certain level of power, you're so far above people like me that you forget to actually look down and see what's going on at this level. So when it comes to local government, I think that's where we should be looking at the conservatives and left or right leaning individuals that really can impact us because they're the ones actually impacting our communities. Bill Maher ain't coming to my house to help cut down a tree that fell on it. It's not what he's gonna do. What's gonna happen is like, you know what? I see this is a big deal. Like, and for me, I think that I've worked in organizations where we were helping to teach older conservatives how to keep updated with social media, help with the canvassing and things like that, so they can go out there and help their neighborhoods for what necessarily like they believed in. But we were learning from both sides why you thought the way you thought. Those conversations were happening regularly, and these were older conservatives who were just kind of afraid to step out of their comfort zone and approach somebody like me. And then we had a conversation, and then we both learned. So those are the folks that I can like truly, I guess, not necessarily tolerate, but I feel that they're trying to benefit the communities that they're in because we live here together. We are seeing each other eye to eye. But once you get celebrity status, once you got like, 1 million followers, we're not the same. Not even close to it. Because you got to be consistent in that. Maintaining that is going to be more important than actually trying to like push policy or getting a law put into play. Because that's the power. And I don't want to live like that. And I think was it JFK had this quote, and this is why it says, too high of a liberal, too high of a Democrat, too high of a Republican, I don't really look at you like, you're some hero of mine. You're supposed to be benefiting the community, on your stage. But was it Kennedy had a quote where it was like, I'm not afraid of the darkness, I'm more afraid of the light. So like not afraid of his failures. Because the idea is that, you fail, but you fail better next time. But giving somebody more power reveals who they truly are. It amplifies whatever they are. So
money and alcohol uncover, not change, in my opinion. It uncovers. Like people say, oh, like they have money, they're an ass. I'm just like, I think they're always an asshole. The money just like, yeah, put a magnifying glass on it. The people that abuse their wives or whatever with a couple drinks, it's like the guy's probably has some anger issues in general, and the alcohol just is enough of a like where he just like has no, at least sober he has some like restraint, like.
right.
And maybe social media could be that third one I could add to it. I never thought about it, but some sort of influence. Yeah, influence, money, which money I guess is correlated, not the exact same, but there's correlation. Money, influence, and alcohol uncover, I think.
I mean, we've seen the reactions to regular citizens being unfriended by somebody and how toxic that can be. So imagine you have 1 million followers, and all of a sudden you lose 100,000 or 50,000 or 10,000 because your viewpoint is considered radical or dangerous, or you made a mistake, or you said something like 15 years ago that came back. I'm not the same person I was from yesterday, but knowing that the potential of you know reacting negatively to losing X amount of followers because that's more important to you than actually serving your constituents, I can't get down with that. Like, I can't. Like, the like is a bit of information, but it holds so much power. Like, if you like my post, I don't know why you liked my post. I don't know why. Like, but I feel good, right? Like, man, 40 people liked my post. I said some real stuff here that impacted these 40 people. Did you? Maybe they just liked your sentence structure. Maybe they liked the funny picture you had on it as well. We don't know. There's no depth to that data.
The algorithm was serving you well that day.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no high level conservative, no high level liberal that I can really like get down with in a way that's like, you know what? I really love what you're doing. I'm like, I'm sure you could have done better. Yeah, you could have done better.
At a certain level of power, their politicians are so bland and unopinionated because they just don't want to. Like Trump, Trump is a pro-choice atheist, without a doubt, but he would never say that, ever, because of making a big chunk of the, I would say the silent majority probably is aligned with him there, or they just don't care enough to. But there's that loud minority of really, really passionate, religious, pro-life that like Trump will never be honest with his true feelings, and that maybe that'll change in our lifetime, because like Trump should be able to say, "Hey, I respect your viewpoints. I respect your God and who you choose to worship. This is who I do. We can still all get along. I love this country." Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? That's a whole nother conversation. But
so I will end this on religion, just for a quick second. So my family is extraordinarily religious, but not in a way where they can't acquire new information to make changes of their opinions. The overarching thing is that there is something more powerful than us, okay? I can't control the rising and the setting of the sun. So once you understand that, you can go forward into the world knowing that there is something more powerful than you. Humble yourself, or you're going to have a lot of Icarus moments, okay? But for me, growing up, what would happen with my family is that, let's say I had something I didn't quite understand about life, right? My mother would read to me a passage in the Bible that would be relevant to it, to let me know that you're not alone in this. It's happened before. Do not think that you're alone. But the world, the universe is a church, okay? It's for you to go out there and explore the full depth of what is in front of you, so you can truly understand what this world has to offer. But that requires an education as well. And the more knowledge you acquire, the closer you get to maybe God or whatever you want to call it, and the more languages you understand, the more you unlock about how different civilizations, societies, and people work in this world. Mediocre people yearn for perfection. And what I mean by that is a perfect world is a lack of growth, a lack of understanding, because true perfect, we're already there. There's nothing more left. To me, perfection is hell. So having the opportunity to go out there and experience the universe, experience like Earth, and having a conversation like this is what I'm talking about. This is life to me. And the moment you think that the Bible has every single answer is the moment I never want you to do another Google search. Ever. Because that complacency is just blind. The moment you think that you've learned everything, or that you can't learn as much from a 5-year-old as you can learn from a 55-year-old, that's just such a narrow viewpoint, and you are limiting life. So in that moment when you think you've learned everything, I think you've stopped living life, and that's truly a terrible thing.
Well, you're right. That's a great way to bring this to conclusion. So Enjoyed having you on today, man, and diving deeper into that brain.
My honor, man.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.